I'm sorry. I just love her to pieces, and it's a real pleasure once you hear her story. Please welcome my friend Janell.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Hi, my name is Janell, and I'm an alcoholic. Mr. Keith Thomas, thank you for inviting me to share. When he called, I was going through some difficulties down in Florida. I spent the summer down there, and my idea was to go down there and relax, and that was the last thing I did. And I realized after getting back here for the summer that my spirituality, I was missing God. I was not seeking God out this summer. So, for Keith to have invited me to share, it's exactly what I needed to do. So I'm very glad and very blessed and grateful to be here. If I lose my train of thought, please feel free to jump in and remind me where I'm at. It does happen, and it happens more often. I did go through some chemo treatments, finished that up at the beginning of the year, but the brain fog that it has left me and being able to articulate words, it's not all back 100%, or the way I like it anyway. So anyway, help me along. Feel free to yell out where I'm at. Okay, I do want to do a little bit of recognition. I know today we have somebody here that has 3 weeks. Would you like to introduce yourself? Yay! Do you have a 24-hour chip? Okay, do we have 24-hour chips here? This one. She has 3 weeks, 21 days. All right. Congratulations. I'm glad you're here. Yes. Yeah. All right. Way to go, Angie. Woo! Fantastic. And congratulations on 30 days. Boy. So I stopped fighting the idea of whether I was born an alcoholic or whether I was a product of my environment. Because when I finally came to realize that I am truly an alcoholic, when I came to believe that in my innermost self, that the question did not matter. I know that once I pick up one of anything, I want more. I am a glutton. I have always wanted to hide my feelings and emotions. And at such a young age, I remember, I'm from Minnesota, born and raised in Minnesota, graduated high school a bit early, and I thought that was a great thing to do until all my friends were still in school, and I was 6 months by myself. I had nothing to do, and so I rented a U-Haul truck and headed to California. I thought it would be a really cool thing to have a postcard that said, with palm trees on it, and send it back to my mom where it said Hollywood. So that was this Swede from Minnesota's big grand idea. And I did, for the most part, I did. I rented a U-Haul. I picked up some free furniture along the way. And I had my cooler full of vodka and headed down the freeway. I ended up in El Toro, California. But anyhow, I'll get to that on what happened. So growing up, my father, he is identified as an alcoholic, and he died with 19 years of recovery. But I always idolized my father, and he couldn't do any wrong in my eyes. And I remember him always having these poker games in the garage on Friday nights, and all these guys and this gruff talk, and a cigar smoke, and it was really smoky, and I could hear poker chips, the clanking of the poker chips going around the table. And I loved that environment. I thought it was cool. And I asked my mom, can I please bring the popcorn out? Can I please bring the popcorn out? So I could go with a little basket of popcorn. And, I just wanted to be a part of that smoky, drinking environment. And, I felt like, that at that time, actually, and I'd have to, upon reflection, looking back at that type of environment that had carried me throughout my 27 years of drinking and using, I felt that I didn't have to feel. I was, my dad was he was an instigator and liked to stir the pot. And he would say things that would embarrass me. He would say things that, hurt my feelings. And at that time in my life, I didn't know how to articulate how I was feeling. So I would run into my bedroom and hide in the closet and sit there, and rock back and forth and cry. And it's like, why is this happening? And I didn't know why. But after doing a 4-step inventory, I had a lot of fear and control, and it started at a very, very young age. So when I was in elementary school, I found rubber cement, and that helped me go into my closet to avoid talking to my dad or being embarrassed or having hurt feelings. And I would sniff this rubber cement, and that got me out of me. And, immediately I started stealing it from the art room at the elementary school. And then I started getting my friends involved in it, and I would fill up these rubber cement bottles because I would steal the gallons. And then I'd go and fill up all their bottles, and we would call it Twilight. So when I had found something that there was chemicals and something out there that I could use where I didn't have to feel and numb myself, I took, that was the path I wanted to go, and I did everything and anything to make sure that I continued to do that, no matter who was in my way. I was introduced to, well, I wasn't introduced to it. We started stealing beer in junior high. After we'd Twilight, we thought we'd add beer in there, and I really liked the beer that we'd steal out of Laura Shireman's dad's. I can't even believe I remember the name. We'd steal the beer, and we'd punch holes in the bottom of it and then open it up real quick, because the faster we drank it, the faster we could catch a buzz. So that's just kind of like how I was living my life. In high school, I had my first DUI in 2008, 1988. I had my first DUI, and my last DUI was in 2008. Oh my gosh. 1988 to 2000, or 19, oh my gosh. Okay, you guys help me out. It was 20 years of drinking, right? I've had 7 DUIs in 20 years. Okay, I could get that out. My last one was 2008. So 2 years before I got sober, I had my last DUI. And I didn't know that my last drink was going to be my last drink, or what have you. But so out of those 7 DUIs, I created a plethora of incarcerations. So I was just talking on the way up here that sometimes when I was arrested, they would put me down as indigent, and I didn't know what that meant. And except I was told inside that you don't have a place to live. Like, oh, I don't? So, you can kind of get a picture of how I was living my life. And, when I first realized what an F or an M meant on my rap sheet, when you get arrested, they give you a sheet of paper and it tells you what your charges are. And I never understood the charges, never understood them. But I knew what it meant if it had an F or a D or an M. An F was a felony and an M was a misdemeanor. And the more felonies that you have, I knew that I was not in a good way. So if I had more Fs than I did Ds or Ms, then I knew I was going to be sitting there for a little while. I ended up, I lowered the bar and lowered the bar and lowered the bar. And, once I lowered the bar, I got comfortable with how low that was. And I would continue to behave that way and to do things that way. And, as my sponsor has ingrained in me, I was a liar, a cheat, and a thief. And that pretty much sums it up. And I didn't care who you were or what you were, if you were related to me. I was going to do what I needed to do to get what I needed to get. And that's how I lived my life. My last debacle, I should say, was January 24th. Here we go on the dates again. I should just skip the dates altogether. Of 2010. And it was the Vikings were playing the New Orleans Saints to go into the Super Bowl. So it was the last playoff game for the Super Bowl. And I had went into a bank trying to extract money that wasn't mine. And it was unsuccessful, but I ran out and I jumped in a car, this poor guy. I saw him putting a case of beer in the back of his truck bed. And so I knew that I was going to be safe with another drinker, right? But I jumped in his car and I made some excuse that I was being chased or attacked and I needed to get out of there. And, please help me. And I ducked below the dashboard and he was leaving the parking lot. And about 15 squad cars coming around the corner. And I thought, oh my God, I am in so much trouble. I was notorious for stealing vehicles that were not mine and then taking them apart. And these were all just activities that I needed to do to make money on the side. And I had this stolen vet in my garage, the house that I haven't been home to for a month and a half because I've been on a runner. I'm going to go have one drink and I don't show back home for another month and a half. But anyhow, finally, I'm sitting in the back or in the front of this guy's vehicle. And he said that he was having a playoff party at his house and that I was more than welcome to come and collect my thoughts and go to his house with the party. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And he had no idea he's harboring a fugitive right now. But I will tell you, at that moment, I didn't know then, but I do know now, that God was doing for me what I could not do for myself. And he gave me a moment of clarity. And it was, Janell, look at your life. And generally, those type of stories were how I ran my life or survived out there for 27 years. But this one particular moment, I had really taken a look, like when I was sitting in the passenger seat, that I'm in big trouble. I am in big trouble, and God help me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I did not reach out and say, God help me at that time, but I had a moment where I was scared. Generally, I went through these little episodes and I was never scared. I was like, oh, thank God I got away from that and got away from that and let's do it again. The only thing that ever slowed me down was being incarcerated or locked up. But so at this moment, I ended up going to this person's house, and they were all drinking and having a good time. And it's funny that I'm able to remember that date because I'm from Minnesota, and it was the Minnesota Vikings playing for the Super Bowl to see who goes into the Super Bowl. So I remember that specifically. I ended up picking up that 5,000-pound phone and calling the person that I was living with at the time. And he said, "Oh, you are in so much trouble, or you're lucky your probation officer didn't go into the garage because that stolen car is in there. But he's been over here looking for you." And I didn't know what to tell him. And I just, he picked me up, and that started my journey. I got back home, and he nicely took my clothes and had them out folded nicely in another room. And I'm like, what do you mean? Putting my clothes in another room. So I was a little taken back by that. I passed out for 7 days, and I didn't, again, I think this is divine intervention for sure. Of course, I couldn't articulate that at the time, but today I know that it was. After 7 days of sleeping on the couch because I couldn't make it upstairs into the room, I knew I had to get my AA sheet signed. I was generally doing that for 27 years. I was signing my own AA sheet or passing it around the house and having other people sign it, or trying to use my left hand, the right hand. And at the time, we had books or pamphlets that would tell us, where to go for the meetings, and I would just look that up and write it. Anyhow, so this time I went and I asked Mark, I'm like, "Gosh, can you please, give me a signature for this?" This is after 7 days of sleeping and not showering. And he said, "Why don't you just go?" And so I did. I went to the 7 a.m. GBG, and I only knew where that was located because I had went there to get a schedule so I could fill in the blanks. But I had went, and I do remember that first week. Keith sat in his chair, and he saw me come walking in, and he bent back and put his head back, and he goes, "Bet you didn't know we had a seat saved for you, did you?" And I'm like, what does that even mean? But I sat down, and I was a vision for you. Of course, I thought I was still looking good, right? Oh, I had this gunny sack of a sweatshirt, and they had asked if anyone here is in their first 30 days, please raise your hand. And I had to ask the gentleman that I was sitting next to, or a couple seats down. He didn't want to sit next to me right away. I said, "What does that mean? I haven't had a drink or been to this meeting in 30 days. What am I doing?" And he said, "When was the last time you had a drink?" And I was able to remember that playoff game, and I was sleeping. I'm like, "Oh my God, I slept for 7 days. I have 7 days. 7 days minus 30, I'm like, my hand shot up, and I was so excited. Actually, Ed had to hold my hand up because when it shot up, it was just slowly coming down because I was so weak, and he held it. I remember him holding the scuff of my gunny sack sweatshirt, and I was thrilled that I didn't have to do that for a full 30 days and that I was ahead of the game. And honestly, when I walked out of that meeting, I thought, oh my gosh, I can do this. This is 7 days. I have never gone 7 days unless I was locked up. Now I'm in society, I'm in public, and it's 7 days. So that was a miracle in itself. And, I felt really, really good about not having to raise my hand for 30 days and that I'm 7 days, sober, and I think I can do it again. I had then went to the 10 o'clock and then the 12, and I had continued that routine, the 7 a.m., the 10 a.m., the 12, for about 18 months. And one person in the 7 a.m. had mentioned the non-AA announcements had went on, and he said, if we're going to be feeding the homeless, so if anybody can get down to Central Christian Church, we'll make sandwiches, and then we all bus to downtown to the rescue mission, and we feed the homeless. And if you're interested in doing that, see me after the meeting. And that was my friend Steve. And I said, I wanted to do that because I remember a long time ago back in Minnesota, I was able to do that at the Dorothy Day Center. And I remembered the feeling that I had after I was of service and feeding the homeless. And I may not, like my mom said, you may not remember everything that people do or what they say, but you can always remember how they made you feel. And I remember that feeling, and I was able to hold on to that feeling until that Saturday came, and I went down to go feed the homeless. And from there, the feeling that I had of giving of my time and giving of myself without asking for anything back, or manipulating or anything. I just started chasing that feeling. And so that was, I think, 14 days into my recovery, or 14 days of walking into the GVG, I started being of service, and not even knowing that that was part of our triangle and, part of the program. But the feeling that I got from that, I was constantly chasing that feeling. So every opportunity that I had, I was wanting to do the chair, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to be the speaker seeker on Sunday. Oh my gosh, I have to have a certain amount of time. And I can't wait to do this. I can't wait to do that. And then somebody said, well, I think you should get a sponsor first. So after 30 days, I announced that I needed a sponsor, and in the 10 a.m., and Rosemarie had, I think she spoke here a couple weeks back, but she had came up to me and gave me a card and put it in my face and said, you call me every day, read the first 164 pages of the big book and highlight everything you identify with. That was a little overwhelming for me. And, I had to call my friend that I was feeding the homeless with. I called him and I said, hey, have you ever heard of this lady? She asked me, she said she'd be my sponsor. And I don't know what to say. And he gave me the best advice, which I now share with my sponsees, is, Janell, ask her to be your temporary sponsor. And, and so I did. I asked if she could be my temporary sponsor. I didn't feel that I was locked or pressured into anything, but I became so excited on what she was offering. I had my own little day that I'd go and meet with her on Wednesdays, and then I would feed the homeless on Saturdays. We'd have a group study on Saturdays. And then I started meeting people and being of service and seeing Keith at the picnics that we'd always go to and going and getting food at the picnics. And it was easy for me to be of service and doing something at different functions because I really didn't want to be there and talk to people. I didn't even, I felt very intimidated. But I knew if I just kept busy and kept moving my feet, that it's going to be okay. And I still today am doing the same thing. Service is a huge part of my story. And my friend Steve said, if it's not inconvenient, it's not service. And, I get that. It's always, got to pick up the phone, got to call. Now, after going through the book, I realized my bracketed fourth step, right, in the brackets, it was fear, 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 control, 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 fear, fear, fear. And then I learned that we had 1,000 form of fear, a thousand different forms of fear. And, I was using alcohol and drugs as my solution. And, once going through the steps, well, it took me a few times going through my steps to realize that the order was important, and it started to fall into place on why they are structured the way they are, and that this is a design for living, because I certainly, I didn't know how to live. I was giving people rides to service commitments at the rehab centers, because Rosemarie was the chair of the hospitals and institutions. So it made it easy for me to ride her tail skirts to all these different hospitals and institutions. And I'd start giving people rides to go share and be on the panel. And my friend Max one day told me that I needed to get my driver's license. This is after 2 years of driving, of being in the program and driving. And I was a little offended when he said that, but this is what the program has done for me. I look back at it now because I never had a driver's license. By the time my charges got racked up, driving without a license was not that big of a deal. But so I never bothered. And anyhow, I was able to do that. I was able to get my driver's license. I was able to clean up the wreckage of my past. After 5 years of recovery, I needed to go back to California and face some warrants. I fled California, and I had a warrant. I was supposed to turn myself in to go to jail, a 6-month jail sentence, and I never did. I came up to Las Vegas, and I never went back. But I went back, and I faced the judge, and I had asked, I did a sentencing memorandum, which, I had a lot of AA friends, and everybody wrote letters, and very, very grateful. And I was able to stand in front of the judge, and I can tell you, I do not like to be sober in front of a judge. It's a way different feeling. It's way different. All the times I could hardly care, but being sober, now I know why I always, guzzled a half a quart of vodka before I went into court. So it was 10 years that this warrant had been old, and the judge granted me, he said that I have served my time. And that was a blessing in disguise. I was so grateful for that. And, just doing the next right thing of cleaning up my past and facing the wreckage. And it's hard to do, but with the help of all you, I was able to do that. And now I don't have any more felonies that are active on my record. Governor Sandoval passed this law back in 2014 or 2016 that if you stayed out of trouble for 7 years, your felonies, if they weren't an A or a B, your felonies would be dismissed. And I was able to get that accomplished. So now I have a driver's license and a bank account, and I went and got a second chance bank account. Anyway, so moving forward, there were 3 incidents during my recovery that were very cunning, baffling, and powerful that I really, really wanted to drink. And one, and it even says it in the book, but one was the death of my father. I had about 9 months of sobriety, and I witnessed his passing, and both of my brothers were standing over, his body, and they looked at each other and they said, "I'm going to the bar." And I'm like, oh, I wanted to go so bad. I wanted to go so bad, and it hurt. And then the phone rang, and it was my stepson, Anthony, calling to send his condolences of my father passing. And I'm sitting there talking to Anthony, and both of my brothers walked back through the door. They were done at the bar, and I'm still on the phone. And I'm like, I can't even believe you guys are back yet. That's just not me. I would be gone, and there's another month and a half, or, clearly until I was homeless, as the, jailers pointed out to me. You don't have a home. But that one, so I look back at that, and that was, definitely a divine intervention. God did for me what I could not do for myself. The second time I really wanted to drink was I had a federal indictment, and I thought my life was, coming together, and I was being of service. I'm in AA, and the employer that I was working for, they were indicted. So there were 2 doctors, a pharmacist, and myself, the front desk, that got a federal indictment. Matter of fact, I was in Florida when they raided the clinic, a medication-assisted treatment clinic, and they came down to Florida and they picked me up. And I went to the Orlando Federal Courthouse, and when they let me out on my own recognizances, I wanted a drink. I didn't know what to do with those feelings. I didn't know. I was scared. I thought, I am sober, and this is what happened to my life, and what am I looking at? Again, I didn't understand the charges, but there was a lot of them. Anyhow, at that moment, I was walking downtown in the downtown Orlando, looking for a cab to get back home because they drove me to the courthouse. I had realized that on the left side of me, there were all bars, and people were there, at happy hour, clanking their beer bottles, and I wanted to go over there so bad. But on the other side, I was trying to find a telephone, and it reminded me of when Bill Wilson was at the Mayflower, and he saw, all the camaraderie happening in the bar, and then he went to the payphone and he started popping those nickels in. Well, that's what I was looking for, a phone. And that whole reflection and scenario went through my head. And again, if I didn't have AA, that whole picture would be different today. And so that is, another thing that AA has done for me. It has provided me a foundation. As long as I am willing to continue to work at the program, it gives me a foundation where when these things and moments happen, that I am able to work through them. I'm able to get through it without taking a drink or a drug. The third time that this happened, this is over a 15-year period, so I'm very grateful to say that after 15 years, I've had 3 very powerful experiences, but I never had to pick up a drink. But the third one was a resentment. I had idolized, again, I put these people on pedestals, and I idolized a friend of mine, and him and his wife came down to visit me in Florida, and I was really happy and showing him all the different, the beaches and everything, but he was loaded, and he had, a big shipment of pills sent to the place that he was staying at that I provided for him. And I thought, how dare you? I was so hurt, and I was so angry. And the funny thing is that it was all about me. I didn't look at who I was angry at. I was angry at another sick person. And I didn't come to that, that didn't hit me until after I got back to Las Vegas, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've been dealing with another sick individual, and I need to give him as much grace as you all give me. And that was me. That's who I was, doing things without taking into consideration any feelings. I had no morals, no values. you know, and I was just a punk kid, even though this person is who I idolized and had helped me through my recovery. He's a psychologist. And so here I am, you know, taking direction and, you know, him as my mentor. And then he comes in and he's loaded. And so, you know, going through these things, you know, it is amazing that, you know, the feelings of fear and control and bad behavior, they have been changing. And the reason I believe they're changing is because I've been seeking God out. And I can tell you over the summer, though going back real quick to this summer, I had an ego that was playing where I was literally edging God out. I did not seek him, and this is just a few months ago. And not that I wanted to drink, but my behavior, where I screamed at the top of my lungs, there was name calling, there was, you know, salacious texts and threats. And when I had these blinders on and I was just in it. And I'm texting and I'm angry and I'm pissed. And it was the person that I have been trying so hard not to be. I love who I'm becoming today. I love the person that I'm becoming. And that moment, it was another resentment that had taken me to that bad behavior and to act like a 2-year-old. And there's going to be an amends, definitely, in place. But yeah, so even having 15 years of recovery, you know, it just went to show me that I'm not safe unless, you know, I have to stay spiritually fit. And the way that I can stay spiritually fit is by practicing the principles, going through the steps, and always reaching out. I think during the summer, you know, what saved me is me picking up the phone, and I was talking to everybody who would listen about this story. And of course, I was calling people that I know would be on my side. Do you believe it? But, you know, my behavior has been changing, but I'm never exempt from going back to who I was before. So, you know, I am forever indebted to AA. I am forever indebted to being of service. And, you know, I can never repay what AA has given to me. And I know that I should not be alive standing here today. The unfortunate thing that I learned in recovery, that my mother, even though she was in Minnesota and I was in California thinking, you know, she doesn't know, it's not affecting her. But, you know, she lived 27 years of her life by when the phone rang, she was happy if it was not the coroner. And so no news is good news, is what my mom always said. And I didn't know that I did that for that many years. I didn't know that I didn't know that's who I became. I didn't know that I you know, that my mother felt that way. And, you know, that was just like a dagger in the heart. But I learned to feel those feelings today. I don't have to run into my closet with a bottle of rubber cement. I don't have to pick up a drink. I don't have to pick up a drug. I can use the tools of AA, which is reaching out, going through the steps and step studies. I need to be a part of, constantly be a part of. And, you know, I'm still in contact with my sponsor every day, if not 2-3 times a day. There's my grand sponsor, Mona, sitting over there. So, you know, and it has just given me a life, you know, beyond my wildest dreams. I will end with this, that during the course of my recovery, I've always wanted to go back to school, and so I did. And I got an undergrad in criminal justice, and that was just kind of funny, you know. I have since changed my my major, and now I'm seeking a master's in public health. And I'm surprised and amazed that I've made it this far. I have 3 semesters left before I get a degree. So I'm very grateful for that. And, just like anything else, I need to, put my nose to the grindstone and keep doing what's in front of me. And, cleaning out my, doing a 10th step where I'm, cleaning out, or keeping my side of the street clean. And just like today, before I came here, I was cleaning out my closet, and literally there were clothes that were been in there for 15 years. And I thought, do I really need this? But it's hard to let go. And I thought, God, that's like my character defects. They're really hard to let go. But I did, it was really quite, liberating to be able to just, I threw them off and threw them into the pile. And I'm like, that just reminds me of my life, just keeping my side of the street clean and helping others. I know there's 8 minutes left, but, one other thing that I did go through, breast cancer. I was diagnosed last year with breast cancer, went through a surgery and chemo and radiation, which I just finished up. But I can tell you, I had my foundation, my spiritual foundation. I knew that I was going to be okay. I didn't feel like I needed to take a drink. That didn't even cross my mind. So being able to navigate through, trials and tribulations is a blessing. I'm so grateful today for you all. So thank you for letting me share.